In this video, our final video on sine numbers. We have seen that if we have two numbers and we have an addition or subtraction, then we just work from left to right. However, we can also have many numbers where the signs are different. For example, if we look at this problem, here we have minus 6 plus a negative 8 plus a negative 2. Now, when we have such a problem, what I do say is try to rewrite the problem. Try to clean this problem up. And what do I mean by clean it up? I can actually combine this negative and this positive sign, and this positive and this negative sign. Because realistically what we're doing here, we're distributing a positive times a negative is a negative. So minus 6 minus 8, and a positive times a negative becomes minus, so that's minus 2. And now if we look at this problem, we have a problem where it's subtraction, so we can work left to right. So the first thing I can do is these two, and since they're both the same signs, I can keep the sign and add the numbers. So that becomes minus 14. I bring down the minus 2. Once again, we have same signs, so I keep the sign and I add the numbers. So in general, try to, if you see a problem and it looks very complicated, don't get nervous. What you should do is try to see how can you simplify this problem? How can you write it in a way where it makes sense to you? Because generally when you have all of those signs, it looks very complicated and you start to get nervous. Let's look at another example. Example, minus 12 plus minus 3 minus a minus 8 plus a negative 6. So once again, this looks very confusing. But if you follow the procedure of sine numbers, then the problem becomes easy. Do we have signs where we can distribute them, or do we have what I call redundant signs? And my answer here is yes. These two are redundant because there's no number separating them. These two are redundant, and these two are redundant. So I can rewrite this problem as minus 12 minus 3, because a positive times a negative is negative. A negative times a negative becomes positive 8, and a positive times a negative becomes negative 6. Now I only have addition and subtraction, so I can move ahead with my left to right principle, and I'd use these two first. And minus 12 minus 3, since the signs are the same, I keep the sign and I add the numbers. 12 plus 3 is 15. I bring down the plus 8 and I bring down the minus 6. Now I work with these two. Since the signs are different, I will subtract. So 8 from 15, that is 7. And I take the sign of the larger, which is a negative. And I bring down my minus 6. And now my signs are the same, so I keep the sign and I add the number 7 and 6, and that becomes 13. And here is my final result. For every problem you obtain, these problems are going to be different. And it's up to you to look at the problems and follow every single step. Let's look at our last example before we make our close off on sine numbers. 12 minus a minus 4 plus a negative 8 minus a minus 6. Once again, I look to see if I have what is called redundant signs, and clearly these two are redundant, these two are redundant, and these two here are redundant. So a negative times a negative, that becomes positive, so 12 plus 4. A positive times a negative becomes negative, and that's negative 8. and a negative times a negative, that becomes positive 6. And now my problem only contains addition and subtraction, so I can apply the left to right principle or rule. Here the signs are the same, so I will keep the sign, so it's plus, and I will add the numbers, and that becomes 16. I subtract 8, bring that down, and I bring down the plus 6. And now these two, because I'm working left to right once again, different signs, so I'm going to subtract. And if I subtract, that becomes 8. Take the sign of the bigger, which is positive. I don't need to write it. And bring down my plus 6. Signs are the same, so I keep the sign, I add the number 8 and 6, and that is 14. And that is how we could work with more complicated numbers. My next video will be an order of operation. I hope my videos on sign numbers are helpful, and I wish you all the best with your studies on sign numbers.